Well, happening today in Bloomfield, lawmakers plan to speak out about what they call drastic cuts to federal funding for food assistance programs. Your reporter Marcy Jones, live outside of Connecticut Food Share in Bloomfield this morning, breaking down who this could impact the most. Marcy.
Good morning. Well, the folks here at Connecticut Food Share say that there are two programs in particular that would suffer greatly. Additionally, they're worried about not only the 1 in 8 food insecure folks here in Connecticut, but they're also very concerned about the local farmers that depend on these funds. The Trump administration has announced cuts that would impact 2 assistance programs here in Connecticut. First, the state is set to lose the local food purchase assistance program, $3.7 million in funding, which will impact 516 food distribution locations that source their goods from 131 farms and producers in Connecticut. Additionally, the local Food for Schools program is in jeopardy, which means Connecticut would stand to lose another $5 million in funding that helps schools and child care facilities purchase foods from nearby farms. In response, Connecticut Food Share is asking Governor Lamont to pass the bipartisan bill that would fully fund the Connecticut Nutrition Assistance Program at $10 million. Senator Blumenthal as well as Senator Murphy will be here in just a few hours at 10:15 to make their remarks. Make sure you keep it right here on Channel 3 for all of the latest updates. Your reporter in Bloomfield, Marcy Jones, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
All right, Marcy, thank you.